Hello, everybody. I thought this would be an opportunity to thank all of you for coming and the media. This is the 25th anniversary of the National Press Club event that launched the global movement, which has now resulted this morning in the first tranche of information being released by the President and Secretary Hegseth. So what I would like to suggest is that everything released today is much less important than what's in our archive. So if you go to dpiarchive.com, we'll put a card up in a minute, you'll see we have about 1,000 times more information than that. I will also say that the 2001 National Press Club event had much more information in it than all the congressional hearings that have happened in the last couple of years, significantly more, with significantly more important whistleblowers. So I'd like to thank all of you for coming and thank my assistant Raven for setting this up. Our whole project is me and my wife and one full-time staff member, and all these people, other people you see are volunteers, so let's thank them for their... In reality, Disclosure Project began on December 13th, 1993. You remember that date. And that's when I was asked to brief the director of the CIA for Bill Clinton. And Mr. Clinton had made inquiries into this matter and had been denied access, which is what happened to Mr. Obama. When you see this clip where he says, yeah, they exist, but I never got to get to the bottom of it, that's what happened to him, because we had briefed him, but through official channels he got nothing. And he is not lying about that. People think he's lying, he is not. So when I had this happen, as a young emergency trauma doctor with 4 little kids, I realized, my God, there is a criminal, unconstitutional program keeping all of this secret. And of course, by then I had figured out why. Because if this information comes out honestly and fully, we'll start a new civilization with no need for the Straits of Hormuz. No oil, no coal, no nuclear power. And within 20 years, no poverty on the planet. However, it also is going to be a $1,000 trillion to $2,000 trillion asset removal if you add all those assets up. So we're going to talk about, frankly, what needs to happen towards the end of how this is going to come out and the transition our civilization must go through in the next couple of years if we're going to make it through to the next 1,000. And that is how consequential disclosure is. So, this is President Trump's full, unredacted briefing document given to him and his administration November of 2024. This. It's unredacted. Now, I will tell you that information and the summary, I was told I had to do a 1-sheet summary for the president, and it included the executive orders you're about to see today. It has resulted in where we are now with the first tranche, and thank you, Mr. President, for fulfilling your promise on that, even though it's not much in that file yet. We're told it's just the beginning. But that's why we want to keep the pressure on. Now, I have to say the timing of this is weird. We planned this months ago and announced this date, and my phone blew up yesterday that the White House was going to dump all this material this morning. So for the media, it's not a coincidence that happened, because there are people close in the administration that we've been ferrying this information to, including the Secretary of Defense and the Vice President and President and Director of National Intelligence and folks like that. I also want to thank the members of Congress who have stepped up to the plate, Ms. Luna and Mr. Burlison, Mr. Burchett, and many others, people in the Senate Intelligence Committee that I provided information to in the SCIF at the Senate Intelligence Committee. There are many, many fine people who are trying to get to the bottom of this. The problem is, and this I want to be clear about, there are 2 governments. There's the government you know about, we elect and appoint. There's a shadow or secret government that is actually running this. And that is not a conspiracy theory. It's a fact. We can prove it. And what that means is, routinely, presidents, SecDefs, and others, they will get the most superficial information on this, whereas the code word level special access projects, top secret, special compartment information, is something they never can penetrate because it's operating outside the constitutional chain of command. I cannot say that more clearly. And that was the conclusion we reached in 1993. Not because I was Googling conspiracy theories, but because I met and briefed the director of the CIA who told me point blank that he and the president were denied access. Okay, this is a serious problem for our country and for the world. So when the most important issue in the history of the human species comes up, and you have the rule of law completely subverted by an unelected, unsanctioned group, we can have our phones off, please, then I think this is a real problem for us as a people. So I think that my biggest problem in the 35 years that I've been doing this is to get people to understand who are in high office that you're not going to get access unless you go do a workaround. And so what I've been trying to do is to be a bridge between, right now, over 760 top secret whistleblowers from every agency, Department of Defense, corporations, get their information to people in government, here and abroad, and particularly to people in national security and intelligence circles who want to know this information but are denied access. That is the primary purpose of why I left my medical career, to do it, because I realized they didn't have access and it was a mistake that people were making to think they did. Now, this is something I would have not have known if I had not taken many, many meetings with key people in the Pentagon. We're talking admirals, generals, senior cabinet level people, ministers of defense elsewhere. And in every single case, sometimes in tears, they would say, we have no access to these programs, but we know they're going on. Now, this is a problem that has to get rectified if we're going to go forward as any kind of democracy. I mean, otherwise it makes a mockery of the rule of law. Okay? So that's the biggest problem, that people have wrapping their minds around that. Here's one of the triangular craft over us. This is a Northrop Grumman or Raytheon device. It's an electrogravitic anti-gravity. And this is what members of Congress I have briefed had people come in after me and said, do not look into that. It will cost you a lot. Don't look at this. But the biggest secret isn't that we're not alone in the universe. It's that we have programs that have already reverse engineered these technologies, but they have not been used in the national security interest. They have been used in criminal enterprises, including murder, kidnapping, child trafficking, drug running, human trafficking, and other issues. This we can prove. This information from a whole group of military folks who are working with me has been handed over to U.S. law enforcement, and as we speak right now, being investigated. All right. So let's play this. Here's something that was released by Congressman Burlison.
I want to cue up a video that I've been given. And as before it starts, I'm going to describe. This was taken October 30th of 2024. This video is of an MQ-9 drone tracking an orb, or this object, off the coast of Yemen. You'll see that another MQ-9 launched a Hellfire missile. You cannot see that drone. And so I'm not going to explain it to you. You'll see exactly what it does. This is when it zoomed out, so you can still see it traveling. Declassified? So, Mr. Knapp, have you heard about events like this occurring? And what information might you have?
You know, the public should be seeing this stuff. And why you're not allowed to, I don't know. But that's a Hellfire missile smacking into that UFO and just bounced right off. And it kept going.
It kept going, and it looks like the debris was taken with it.
Yeah. What the hell is that?
So
flies like that?
Again, I'm not going to speculate what it is, but the question is, why are we being blocked from this information?
This event was friendly fire. It was not an extraterrestrial device. That sphere was us. Now, the operators, here is a real problem. The first time I briefed the head of intelligence for the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the head of the Defense Intelligence Agency, they were not read into this. And I said, your military aircraft and systems are often intercepting and having close calls, not with alien vehicles, but with clandestine, covertly made and funded black budget aircraft made by our aerospace giants, but off book and without the knowledge of Congress or the president. And therefore, very few people are read into. So you may have a top secret clearance, and in Washington, that and a couple bucks gets you on the metro. But frankly, but it doesn't give you access to those special access projects that are code word compartmented dealing with this. So much of this is centered in corporate, but there are government people, agencies that do have this information, but they often are under orders not to share it with the elected leaders or the cabinet. So this is a dysfunction that has to get corrected, and I know it's being looked at. Next. So here is something that I'm having to say, since people like Robert Bigelow of Bigelow Aerospace and others who are friends with the president have been gaslighting him about this issue. They are saying to do a soft or partial disclosure and cover up most of it. No, that can't happen. Now, there are OPSECs, operational security, dealing with this, right? That is legitimate. You don't want the propulsion systems that make something fly like that in the hands of terrorists. But you cannot deny their existence, because that leaves people open to the myth that all of the people who had contact and had experiences such as abductions and mutilations are encountering aliens when they're encountering our own covert programs. CIA, psychological warfare operations, we're going to prove this today. So once you use an advanced tech on innocent civilians here and around the world, you can't now claim to keep it secret. That has to be known. Now, you don't need the operating system, just like no one can go down to Ace Hardware and buy a nuclear bomb or a nuclear trigger, right? But you have to disclose they exist, because they've been used illegally and abusively against the population for decades, since the late 1950s. Next.
Are aliens real?
They're real, but I haven't seen them, and they're not being kept in, what is it?
Area 51?
Area 51. There's no underground facility, unless there's this enormous conspiracy, and they hid it from the President of the United States.
Okay, so you all know he had to walk that back, but what he said there was true. And it wasn't because, it was because we had put together, and I'd provided to John Podesta, who had put together the cabinet and had been chief of staff of Clinton, a huge file, a thing like this one. And so he knew it was real, but he never, through the chain of command, got access, so he wasn't lying. Now, Trump later castigated him on Air Force One. He was flying, and he said he shouldn't have said that, and that's top secret. And that prompted him to then issue this statement, which I won't read to you, you know it, where the president ordered the Secretary of War Hegseth to start releasing files and to do it as soon as possible. And of course it says any and all information connected to these highly complex but extremely interesting and important matters. So what happened today was just, again, a trial balloon, first little bit. Next. And
you're going to release all the UFO files?
We're working on it.
We saw aliens.gov.
We saw
aliens.gov.
I don't think they're aliens. I think they're demons anyway, but that's a longer discussion.
All right. I just want to address this for just a moment. I had to go, Benny Johnson is a big podcaster and friends with the vice president, and when this happened, my phone blew up from all over the world. And of course, there are certain elements of like the Opus Dei group at the Catholic Church and other groups that have been pushing the aliens or demons agenda for 50 years. He is a Catholic. I respect people's faith, but you cannot confuse an extraterrestrial advanced civilization with a demon or an angel. This is very dangerous for somebody one heartbeat away from the Oval Office to speak this way, because this is how we end up in World War III that's interplanetary, which is what the CIA has been wanting for decades. They keep the fires burning, they provide disinformation, they brainwash people with nonsense, and that statement has got to be retracted. Now, let me explain how this has evolved. I was on the show, the Benny Johnson show, a week later, and I laid this out. One of the things that the vice president said, and this is a common mistake. You see this little thing? You know what it is? Yeah. Smartphone. So what? But if you took this back and showed Thomas Jefferson, my farm out in the country is near his house, and you showed him this, it would be supernatural. So what the full clip was, he said, because these are behaving supernaturally, they're demons. But remember, everything we're using in this room right now would be supernatural to someone 500 years ago. An airplane would be impossible, defying gravity, right? If you were to show a video on a cell phone to people in Salem, Massachusetts, you'd be burned at the stake as a witch. Okay? This is not okay to say something like that. This is a serious national security matter. It cannot devolve into the lunatic fringe of those kinds of theologies, because what are we going to go gallop pell-mell back to the 7th century? We might as well be the Ayatollahs in Iran. This can't happen. I'm sorry to come on strong on this, but this is very dangerous stuff. Now, is there a theological and spiritual aspect of this? Yes, because the whole universe is a conscious quantum hologram. The whole creation. I believe in God. I believe in the prophets. I don't have a problem with that. But there are different phenomena. And one of the things I want to leave you with on this, because I could go on all day, I won't. We have other things to do. When I was at the Vatican with Pope John Paul, senior theologian, Monsignor Balducci, I was in his apartments overlooking St. Peter's. And this issue came up then. This would have been in 1995, 6, 7. And he was himself a demonologist. His specialty were demons, believe it or not, at the Vatican. And he laughed when this came up. He said, look, neither angels nor demons need flying saucers. He put it so simply, and it's true. So people need to be careful. You're going to hear so many theories about what this is, and this interdimensional demon part of it is a deliberate gaslighting by senior people in these covert illegal programs to prey on the religious beliefs of certain people. And unfortunately, that's what's happened to the vice president and Tucker Carlson and a few other people. This needs to get corrected. Congressman Luna has also been deceived this way. I know the people who have targeted her with these wrong ideas, and a couple of them have been turned over to law enforcement for investigation for various crimes and felonies. But I think this is why we have to be careful what words we use matter right now as this comes out. Okay, next. I just want to show you from the archive. If you go on the dpiarchive.com, you will see this map. These are the black sites that we've been able to document from whistleblowers. There's nearly 1,000 whistleblowers I've debriefed over the last 35 years. And the ones that are key, it will be in the next slide, and you'll see this summary. Now, this is what I've asked the administration and members of Congress to focus on, are these top tier ones, right? And the top tier ones, Dugway, Edwards, Wright Pat, not Nellis Air Force Base per se, but the Northern Nevada test area. Area 51 is not particularly relevant, by the way. It's an old site, and the real actions moved up to Area 54, 53, some in 52. Those are grids on a map, okay? So that's what you want to realize, is that we update this map as we get new intelligence from whistleblowers and sources who are defecting, And this is your guide. Now, the corporations involved, you can see those. I'm not going to read them all. We don't have time. But this is in the briefing document. And by the way, there is this document, the redacted version of it you can get from us. You can just order it. And it has everything but the sensitive, some of the tactical information and then some of the sensitive names that have to be redacted for the public, okay, or out. But everything else is in there. This is in there. So I would suggest if you really want to know where these assets are and where the underground bases are, you go through that. Now, we have been able to map down to the entry points of many of these places, both at the Dugway Proving Grounds in Utah, Edwards Complex, the Lockheed Skunk Works, Northrop Grumman Test Range, the facilities out in Tonopah and going up at Groom Lake and Pahut Mesa. We know where those places are. We know where the assets are. And most of them are underground, and they're very large underground facilities. I'm told the one that's in the Utah complex associated with Dugway is about 1,300 square miles under the earth. That big, huge, massive. And it's been built by contractors like Bechtel Corporation using a nuclear-powered tunneling device. And we have the schematic for that device that's in our archive that was developed in the 1960s. So when they started building these vast underground complexes, that's what they used. It was a nuclear-powered tunneling device. Next. This I just went through. That's the cover page. Next. So here are the actions that we've been recommending. A criminal investigation focused on illegal covert government and corporate programs related to UFOs. That is happening. This is what was in his recommended actions provided to him in November to the president. Both executive and congressional actions are needed to authorize a law enforcement search and seizure of these illegal operations and their assets. This has also begun. These assets include recovered extraterrestrial vehicles, man-made UFOs, and related technologies, extraterrestrial biological entities, EBINs, or living ETs that are captive and still living. We have people who know where those are, and man-made alien-appearing bodies and robots that are used in false flag operations, such as abductions. Almost all the mythology about the UFO subject is a psychological warfare operation that's run mainly out of the PSYOPs division of the CIA. A key objective would be immediate cessation of the targeting and capture of extraterrestrial vehicles and their occupants, which is now ongoing. Now, I understand there is an attempt to stand down those actions, because if they don't get stood down, it's very dangerous. It's been going on since the 40s with directional energy weapons. 3, both executive orders and legislation should support the above recommendations and include a provision for immunity for those currently or previously in these illegal programs who are willing to cooperate fully. What am I saying here? We have many high-value assets that have been involved in criminal activities, and they need a letter of non-prosecution from the Department of Justice, an Attorney General, to protect them from prosecution so they can cooperate, and they want to cooperate. So this is how you make a deal, okay? The art of the deal. Here's the cosmic deal, all right, Washington. We need to extend letters of immunity to some of these people. Next. A diplomatic initiative should be immediately started to make peaceful contact with any and all ET civilizations visiting the Earth. They should be viewed as a permanent national and international diplomatic mission, the goal of which is to full rapprochement with ET civilizations. This has never happened. It started to happen in the early 50s with Eisenhower. It got shut down. And we need to start that back up. Now, our CE5, or Close Encounters of the Fifth Kind Contact Initiative, has been doing that formally for 36 years. But it's an ad hoc public diplomatic group. It's like citizens diplomacy. You can get the app, CE5 Contact, on your app stores. But this needs to go official now. So we're not alone in the universe. It's being acknowledged. Now we need to get serious about not just the United States, but other countries creating a safe space and a protocol for contacting these civilizations rather than just tracking them and blowing them out of the skies, which is what's been going on since the 40s. An executive order is needed to immediately cease the targeting and downing of NHI craft and any other acts of hostility towards them. An international agreement removing and banning all weapons from space and the use of advanced reverse engineered technologies as weapons should be negotiated with enforcement capabilities in place globally. Why do I say this? Because OCONUS, outside continental United States, is where a great many of our assets are that are being run by a sort of a global covert group, and you have to stand them down globally. It's not enough to stand them down just in the continental United States, right? So the organization running these secret programs, think of it as a global hybrid corporate governmental entity that operates with alacrity regardless of your geopolitical borders between Canada, US, Russia, China, whatever. And this is why these objects are seen in Russia and China that are man-made ones. And it is a big problem. So when I've met with people who are tactical operators at a very high level, the big discussion is how do you get that under control? And get it under control so that we can have a peaceful world, but also make peaceful outreach to these visitors who mean us no harm. They're here to help and understand us and contain us if we go too far crazy, right? And I'm talking about using technologies that we have that are way beyond the thermonuclear weapon level that we have and have been using against them. So the aggressors here, ironically, are the humans. Forget all the Hollywood movies and the UFO mythologies. If they were aggressive, we'd be gone. Okay, next. So now I'd like to introduce Roderick Castle. He's a U.S. Marine Corps veteran who served from 1994 to 1999. He served with the Flying Nightmares, an AV-88 Harrier squadron stationed out of MCS Yuma, Arizona, and his account is very important. Thank you, Roderick.
Hello. My name is Roderick John Castle III, and I'm prepared to repeat this testimony before Congress or any other legal body. From 1994 to 1999, I served as an Aviation Ordnance Marine with VMA 513, the Flying Nightmares, an AVAB Harrier squadron out of Yuma, Arizona. I was an E5 sergeant, leading teams of Marines responsible for the weapons systems and crash response. I deployed aboard the U.S. Bella Wood and the USS Essex. After active duty, I continued serving in the New York Army National Guard and the Air National Guard. And in the aftermath of September 11th, I participated in air defense operations around New York City. In 1997, during an exercise in the California desert near 29 Palms Marine Corps Air Station, I encountered something outside standard military practices and technology. 6 of our VMA 513 Harrier jets were attached to a special purpose Marine Air Ground Task Force, participating in what was called the Hunter Warrior Advanced Warfighting Experiment. On March 10th or 11th, my team were sent out by the airfield tower to investigate unidentified aerial activity, possibly flares. Myself and 4 Marines headed to the identified spot near Emerson Dry Lake Bed. As we came over a hill approximately 10 miles outside of the main base, we witnessed a large, flat, black mass hovering above the desert floor. It was silent, triangular, approximately 300 feet in length, and it hung in the air roughly 150 to 200 feet above. With no visible propulsion and no heat signature consistent with known aircraft. There were spherical yellow-white lights embedded in each point of the triangle. The lights were not bright, and in the center of the triangle was possibly concave. This is all I was able to observe in those few seconds. On the ground, approximately 200 feet down the hill, were 3 black F-150, 350 type unmarked vehicles and 20 to 30 men armed with rifles and sidearms, dressed in black tactical gear, no insignia, no identifiers. We skidded our Humvee and crash response trailer to a stop and were quickly overtaken by 5 of the men who ran up toward us in an arrowhead formation. Aviation Ordnance Marines do not carry our M16s on us. Our weapons were in the back on a rack. So we were quickly overtaken. We were ordered out of the vehicle with rifles pointed at our heads, pushed against the truck in order to look at the ground. These men had American accents. I knew that at any moment we could be shot in the head and erased in the desert. Approximately 2 to 3 minutes later, in my peripheral vision, I perceived the triangle craft arc upward and then accelerate to the northwest at an incredible speed. The men ran back to their vehicles and the entire team drove away quickly in the same general direction as the triangle. The Humvee would not restart for 5 minutes. Some battery power, but the engine would not turn over. Upon returning to the base, we were relieved of duty before the shift was over in order to return to our group sleeping area. We were met there by our acting staff sergeant and a warrant officer. The intention was clear. They were there to check on us and to follow orders given from above. We were asked about the flares, and we reported that we saw nothing. Myself and my fellow Marines did not discuss the experience. I only received a silent, "What the F," from my corporal. The sense was we had seen something we should not have seen, and that we could have and could still be killed or reprimanded because of it. The following day, I, of course, experienced psychological distress, confusion, anxiety. Then myself and the 4 other Marines received an unscheduled anthrax vaccine, which I'm still trying to get answers about. And then came the interrogation. Approximately a week later, back at Marine Corps Air Station Yuma, I was brought in by NCIS, Naval Crimes Investigative Service, under the pretense of unrelated allegations, theft of computers, charges that ultimately led nowhere. But the intent was clear. We are keeping an eye on you. Following that deployment, myself and the 4 other Marines were assigned to different units. I have attempted to reach out to them, and they either I cannot locate them or they want nothing to do with disclosure, and I respect that. In the years that followed, I dealt with symptoms that many veterans in this space will recognize: PTSD, neurological irregularities, memory disruption. And like many others, I tried to make sense of it in a world that wasn't ready to hear it. And I want to end by saying that, again, I am prepared to give this testimony to Congress. I did file a report with the FBI, even though it's 29 years later. It happened on U.S. soil, and I have still not received a response. Thank you. Thank you.
So the next will be Green Beret, who was operational. Next slide, please. And he will share with you several events that happened during his career, and I very much appreciate Randy coming here. He is a Green Beret who held a TSSCI clearance. He was stationed for a period in Crane, Indiana, as a weapons expert between 2013 and 2015, and he has some very important information to share from that. Thank you.
My name is Randy Anderson, former U.S. Army Green Beret, weapons sergeant. I also spent 20 years as a firefighter for the city of Las Vegas. My entire career is built on discipline and service to my community and my country. And what I'm going to share with you is something I experienced during my military training in 2014. I'm not here to tell you what I saw exactly what it was, but I'm just going to report as what I've seen that day. I was at Naval Surface Warfare Crane, Indiana, which is a weapons, high-level weapons training facility for the Navy. We were there doing some routine training, but advanced weapons training that day, or that week. A few days into the training, myself and another one of my classmates were pulled aside after class and were told we're going to see some additional stuff. Nothing at first seemed unusual about this. We were taken to another building brought to an elevator that went down significantly further than I've experienced going down an elevator before underground. So that was notable. Once we got out, went through some security checkpoints that were, I would say, equivalent to going through a skiff. And Dr. Greer's talked about that before. A skiff is just like a higher level of security. So we went through something equivalent to that. And we're sanitized, take all of our electronics and watches and devices off and make sure that you're sanitized. And that's where it felt like something different was going on. After that, we walked down the hallway and were guided by these two gentlemen to this area that had a sign that I thought, and this has been talked about on the internet a lot, but the sign said off-world technology, which was very strange to me as well. And so I have no claim about why that sign was there. It's just it stood out as something strange. We entered a room. In the first room was a metallic sphere that I saw, about basketball-sized sphere. And now there's all this talk about spheres all everywhere, and it looked about that size of the typical sphere that you've been seeing around. It was hovering over a podium, a couple feet off the top of the podium, and it was just floating there, and it was very strange to see. And it was metallic. It was a strange metal. It looked just unnatural to me. And the other object, it's been nicknamed the Gauntlet, but I don't necessarily think that's what it was. It came out that way when I first told the story, and people kind of ran with that, but I don't know that that's what it was. It looked like you would pick it up by putting your arm in it, so that's why it got that kind of name. And it had some type of crystal, looked like a crystal display screen on top of it. And while I was looking at it, I saw inky black symbols start to appear above it, and I feel like I was the only one in the room that had seen that at the time, and I didn't mention it. I was new on the team at the time, and I wasn't gonna take any chance of getting pulled aside for something else. I didn't want to take any chance of getting off my team, really. So I just didn't mention that I saw that day. And we got to see this stuff. They talked a little bit about, that they recovered it from an old crash, and they talked about it pretty nonchalantly, like it was a Tuesday afternoon, and then we were brought out of there and had a quick debrief, and that was that. We were told not to talk about it, and we didn't. So I never was told why we were brought down there. I don't know what the purpose was, and to this day I've never had answers to that. You want me to talk about the test site stuff?
Yeah.
Since then, I've worked out at the test site. I've worked all over that facility.
Nevada.
Yeah, in Nevada, where Area 51 is located. I worked all over that facility doing red team operations, which is basically for Tier 1 units, we provide an enemy fight for them. There's a couple things that have happened out there. We saw a couple times we saw orbs that were just floating around, and we were told not to talk about. And again, this isn't part of my military career, so this was different. We're just told not to talk about them, or we'd have to do extra paperwork, so all the guys kind of just hushed up about it. One green orb and one orange orb is what I saw. A triangle-shaped craft was another one I told Dr. Greer about. That just kind of...
If you can put the next slide up. Hello? There you go.
Yeah. It was a little less equilateral than that. It was a little bit more sharp of a triangle, but it looked a lot like that. And we saw that as going into nautical twilight hours. And then and when I was deployed, at one point we saw some advanced drone technology, which is a little bit scary for me to talk about. But I would say, based on my experience and what I've seen, that a lot of the stuff that people mix up for UFOs is probably a lot of technology that we have, advanced technology that we have as well. That's just my experience. So that's basically everything.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. Yeah, this off-world technology office is a real place that he went, and it is extraterrestrial artifacts there in Indiana. So that's now on the map, and it's been handed over to investigators in the government. These triangles that you're seeing like this, some are more isosceles, some are equilateral. This one is probably a Northrop Grumman, There are others that are, the prime contractor would be Raytheon. They're anti-gravity, quote-unquote, electrogravitic. They have no payload of fuel, no oil, gas, jet fuel, rockets, means of conventional propulsion or energy, and they do not have, most of the time, nuclear reactors on them. So they're pulling energy out of what's been called the zero-point energy field, and they have an anti-gravity or mass cancellation lifter system, and those were developed from reverse engineering ET craft back around 1954 is when we had the breakthrough on that. 1 year before I was born. I'll be 71 next month. So it's been a while since we've had this tech, although most presidents and members of Congress have no idea we do. So thank you very much for sharing that. Next. Well, we have Mike Battista. He's a former Green Beret also, who has been involved with some what are called psionic programs. And those programs deal with making contact with non-human intelligence to bring them within a certain range for operational purposes in classified areas and programs. So with no further ado, I'd like to thank Mr. Battista and introduce him to you.
Thank you, Dr. Greer. All right. Good afternoon. My name is Mike Battista, and I am willing to testify under oath before Congress for what I'm about to say. I'm here to speak about a series of experiences that began during my final year of active duty service as a U.S. Army Special Forces soldier. That background shaped the way I observe, assess information, and approach serious matters. I was visited by and interacted with multiple types of UAP and NHI. These were not isolated sightings. They were sustained, direct, and responsive interactions. Approximately 8 months after leaving the Army, I had become somewhat of interest while trying to figure out why this was happening to me. And eventually I was approached, evaluated, tested, and eventually recruited by a military contractor to work as a psionic asset. A psionic asset is an individual who utilizes consciousness to interact with non-human intelligence for operational purposes, including initiating contact, influencing the engagement, and facilitating proximity. This was operational contact. The concept was that consciousness could serve as an interface, and along with focused intention and specific states of awareness, you could use it to initiate or intensify contact with NHI. And that basically means using consciousness to create the conditions for the interaction. The objective was to use psionic assets to attract UAP for technical exploitation, target acquisition, and downing of non-human craft, to include the recovery and reverse engineering of that technology. This was not the outcome of every contact event. In many cases, they were just observed using advanced imagery, like infrared and thermal systems. I can't discuss any methods, locations, or specific operations, but I can say this. This was not just about observing the phenomenon, it was about interacting with it in a controlled way. And after that period, I did eventually go public and work alongside an aerospace company focused on ethical and peaceful contact. At the end of the day, the interaction between consciousness and the phenomenon is real and it needs to be taken seriously. In the future, this subject will not be defined by sightings alone, but by our ability to understand it and interact with it. Thanks for your time and hearing my testimony.
And there's a video he took of one of them on the ground.
Started playing. So this is an orb, and this was within 50 feet of my position. My team and I acquired this. This was in Florida this year, a few months ago, and you can see. We can replay it again.
Yeah, you can play it. Yeah.
Yeah, you can see it. There's some sort of sphere or bubble around this, and it's acting in an extremely anomalous way. And we've been seeing this phenomenon for quite some time, but this was the first time we were able to get as close as we did to this. There was a limit of advance with this phenomenon. It did not want us to get closer than we did. It kept moving away from us, so we took that as a reason to not go forward, but there you go.
Yeah.
And thank you guys.
Thank you. Yep. Up next. One thing I want to comment on this, because this is a quick trip through some complex ideas. All this is in the archive. When he refers to psionic, what you need to understand in just simple layperson's term, imagine this instead of being electromagnetic frequency, radio frequencies, being able to interface directly with conscious thought in an intended way. Very advanced, think of it as conscious AI. That is what extraterrestrial civilizations use. You cannot communicate across the vastness of space at the speed of light because it would take 1 million years to get a signal to a star system 1 million years away. I've known this since I was a child when I had contact directly with these civilizations and learned what that technology was. So it has been formalized, unfortunately, into a weapon system. This is why General Stubblebine, the head of Army intelligence back in the early 90s, 1992, offered me $2 billion as a young doctor to give up my medical career and what I'm doing with this project to become an asset for him, because our program had broken the Rosetta Stone code of contact that involves the use of consciousness, directed thought, and technology to make contact, but we do it in a peaceful way. Unfortunately, there are systems operating out at the Edwards Complex, the Nevada Test Range, Provo, Utah, and another sites on the coast of Florida, where those same systems are turned into a way to attach to and guide over extraterrestrial vehicle and then target and strike it and knock it down with an electromagnetic pulse weapon, the very existence of which is in violation of the International Non-Proliferation Treaty, because it is a component of the EMP that comes out from a nuclear device. But in this case, it's just the signal itself, and those are used to strike these objects, and it disables them because they are 100% electronic and transdimensional. But just keep in mind that any technology, even consciousness-assisted technologies, can be used for good or for bad. And in this case, what we started in 1990 as a peaceful citizens ambassador outreach to non-human life forms from other star systems got twisted into a weapon system. And I know many people who have been in those programs. I've known about this since the early 90s. Now it's beginning to come out. There was an operator out at the Edwards Complex named Jake Barber and some of his team members that came out last year who knew about those operations, who were on the retrieval teams. This is real. It sounds like science fiction, and I understand that to most people. It's a bridge too far, but you're not dealing with 20th century and 21st century technology. You're dealing with civilizations that are thousands to millions of years more advanced, and they have technologies that would all look magical to us. But that part of it, a big part of it, is the thought-consciousness interface with matter and space-time. And that is what they're using for communication, but it also is used to sense them by people who are skilled, like Mr. Battista and others. And I'm glad to hear he's involved with a program now that's peaceful, but over the last 50 years, they've not been so peaceful, and they've been used to basically attach to the guidance systems, lure them over and strike them and down them. So imagine if you were, it's like when the Iranians got that really space-age looking drone that they hacked into the system, landed it and reverse engineered it back years ago. You can look this case up. Imagine doing that with thought, consciousness, actuation, and interface. Same thing, but high-tech, very high-tech. To all the AI people, listen carefully. This is what's really coming, conscious AI. Now I want to take a really quick trip here, connecting a few dots, because as this disclosure happens, and it's going to be building and building over the next months, there'll be a tremendous amount of confusion, not only about demons, but about what most people attribute to UFOs. But that's a general term. And as I mentioned earlier, there are man-made operations and there are non-human or extraterrestrial ones. So here's a quote from the renowned astrophysicist Jacques Vallée. Dr. Vallée, back in the 80s, acquired a CIA document from 1985 outlining the use of these advanced man-made UFOs with creatures that look alien, that are man-made, to abduct people in Brazil and Argentina for their, and I quote, psychological warfare experiments. That's true. Here he is commenting on it.
Or could it be manipulated purposely by people who have the technology to simulate UFO sightings? And people say, well, of course not.
Next. And here, going all the way back to 1953, a CIA director, Walter Smith, and it's a memo describing the psychological warfare value of the UFO subject. So this was 1 year before we mastered gravity control. I have people who've been in the vault to see the documentation. 1954, October, is when we mastered gravity control, gravity field propulsion. And they began to think, how can we divert people away from the extraterrestrial phenomenon but create a false narrative that they're a threat? They began in the late 50s and early 60s on a program of staging human abductions, staging mutilations. So have people had contact with ETs? Yes. Have people been abducted by ETs? No. The abductions are being done by a covert special operations program, and it began in the 60s. And this is something we have asked that the president and the intelligence community stand down by all means necessary, because it's abusing many innocent civilians. I myself, in July 1994, right after I briefed the Crown Prince of Liechtenstein, Hans Adam von Liechtenstein, I was attempted to be abducted out of my hotel room. So I know this is real, and the technologies that are used, we know exactly what they are. We don't have time to unpack that. Tomorrow we will at the 4-hour event. But I think you need to understand this is under criminal investigation also. Next. And here is a colonel who's known as Dr. Death. He has a PhD in death and decay thanatology, Colonel John Alexander.
Another one we put on a UFO and was able to report like he had been abducted. Mm-hmm. In this case where he had not been, but UFO sightings were, popular at the time, particularly abduction scenario. So that was one where, again, changing history could cause a new scenario and be able to describe the situation just as if it were real.
And again, next.
Many
Air Force Office of Special Investigations
that deal with ET simulations. What I'm referring to here, there have been some contact events. The one you're referring to, I have sources, was actually not ET.
We did do that, yes. OSI did that. There was a special group out of the 7602nd Air Intel Wing at Fort Belvoir that came out and did that. They had these people that had maybe some sort of defects, anatomical defects that were brought in to fool people into thinking they're aliens. Yeah, I can't give you any specifics because the program is still classified, and they probably still doing it.
And indeed they are. So this is pulling the curtain back on the Wizard of Oz, pulling all the levers, scaring the hell out of Dorothy and the Scarecrow, which would be us and the media and all that. So you need to understand that it's so complex that when you're dealing with this brand new to the subject, like the president, members of Congress, and people who come and go in the Department of Defense, Department of War, DNI office, it's a big lift to get them up to speed. But we have to do it quickly now that this is going to come out officially. So next. Former Congress.
I think the most important information will be the biologics that are not human that have been discovered. And even some of the briefings that aren't classified just need to be out in the public. I mean, I had someone come and brief me who was in a military uniform, worked for the United States Army, that was briefing me on the locations of hybrid breeding programs where captured aliens were breeding with humans to create some hybrid race that could engage in intergalactic communication. An actual uniformed member of the United States Army briefed me on that.
Now, what Congressman Gates is referring to is something I learned about in the early 90s, and that there are things called program life forms, or PLFs, that are man-made aliens from genetic material from retrieved actual extraterrestrials that are then combined with some human DNA, and they come up with these sort of, I call it a Frankenstein alien. So many of the greys, the reptiles, these things you hear about, those are real, but they're man-made. And we know the facilities where they're making them, how they're making them. I know physicists and people who've worked on them. It sounds like science fiction. It's gruesome, frankly, but it's real. And I think this is, people need to understand that. Next.
But I'm wondering, kind of how you react to that, because you are connected, you're on the UFO subcommittee. I mean, I'm just wondering what you make of that. Have you heard anything like that?
Well, I'm still a member of Congress, so I can't really comment too much on what Matt said. But I will say this.
Wait, seriously? Are you being serious, or is that tongue in cheek?
I'm being 100% serious. Okay. I've been 100% serious. I've been briefed by just about every alphabet agency there is. And I'll just tell you this. If they would release the things that I've seen, you would stay up. You'd be up at night worrying about or thinking about this stuff. We just need to disclose it all. I'm sick of it. Well, I was briefed. I'll just tell you this. I was briefed last week on an issue, 2 weeks ago, and it would have set the earth on. This country would have come unglued, I think, if they would have heard all that I heard. I told the president, release it all. And the problem is the people that are around the president don't know and the president doesn't know the questions to ask. A few of us are going to have to get with the president and tell him what he needs to ask and where he needs to look.
Right. So that's what the Disclosure Project's main mission is to get that intel to these people who I know, get them to network it with the president and other people, and find people who are not corrupt to take the investigation further. So this Disclosure Project officially is just beginning, although we, technically did it 25 years ago. Next. Now we're going to talk about something that's really fun. We have breaking news on that. I just want to give my introductory information here real quickly. The Buga-sphere. So this object, back in March of last year, was flying around Buga, Colombia, South America. It is an extraterrestrial object. We've done the analysis on it. It is electrogravitic anti-gravity. It is not a hoax. There are now 10 different videos from 10 different spheres flying in this region in South America. And I will say that recently a new one has landed and has been retrieved. This one that I have handled and seen and been to Mexico City now 3 times since June. I took Congressman Burlison down with me in June of last year. Has interesting inscriptions which have been analyzed to be a type of Proto-Sanskrit, a very unusual type of circuit pattern on the top of it. And if you look at these holes around the equator, the center, it's one seamless sphere, but inside these holes is a type of resin that has fiber optics microscopically in them. And we took some of this resin and tested it next, and you will see that the resin done at the University of Georgia, the top carbon-14 dating facility, is 12,560 years old. So this sphere is 12,560 years old. It's the end of the last ice age when a comet or an asteroid hit. It's the flood stories of ancient times. So either a very advanced extraterrestrial civilization assisted at that time or was already here, or people working with those civilizations made this. But it is an extraterrestrial technology. Next, you'll see the metallurgy we did. The whole report is 110 pages. You can see the list of elements. In there, interestingly, are a number of elements that were not even discovered until the late 1800s or early 20th century that have a high electromagnetic conducting purpose today, but in unusual quantities. The actual alloy itself, that is the skin of this 1-foot diameter sphere, is in fact no known alloy that currently exists in any aerospace or industrial application. It matches none of them in its complete decomposition analysis. Next. So here's it's interesting, X-rays and CAT scans. So I'm going to show you these lit up areas. There are fiber optics that light up within this. Fiber optics were modern ones we use as a doctor, and laryngoscopes and surgery and other purposes for communications. Those were reverse engineered from an ET craft recovered in the 40s. That's where you got your best integrated circuits, and fiber optics and also night vision cell technologies were from reverse engineering extraterrestrial vehicles. Next. Here is a very unusual structure from the CAT scan. They used a tin filter to get some of the colorization and elements. Interestingly, this structure no longer exists in it. This was taken not long after it landed. After it had gotten too close to a power line, it shorted out and landed. That's how we have it. And a man picked it up. But what's fascinating about this is that when I saw it, I immediately thought this is some type of superconducting low temperature plasma, and that can recruit energy from what's called the quantum vacuum or zero point field, provide the energy to put it in rotation and spin and have it levitate. Now when this landed, when the farm or the guy in Buga, he was out in the countryside, saw it go down after it got near the power lines, it weighed about 2 kilos. Now it weighs 10. So there was a gain in mass of a 4 or 5-fold. Why? So the nature of the physics, we don't have time to go into and put you all to sleep anyway, is that when you create a certain voltage in rotation, you can get what's called a mass cancellation effect. So in terms of, and mass is different from weight. Weight is what something is in one gravitational field of the Earth. Mass is the periodic table weight that you see, the mass of the elements. But if it gets massless, if it goes to zero mass, it vanishes and teleports or goes out of this dimension and can, through quantum entanglement, appear in here and then here. But we understand, we meaning in the classified programs, that my uncle's old company was Northrop Grumman and Lockheed Skunk Works, that's understood. But this, interestingly, this structure, next slide, we did a micro CT scan, he did, and here's a Nikon camera. Look at the detail. These are amazing for industrial and aerospace purposes. And so a really advanced one that was in Pueblo at the university last month, Jaime was able to arrange. He's heroically done this. And I want to show you the image. Here's the interior of it now. Where's that structure? It was like dissipating a cloud. I think it was an energy form that dissipated. And here's a video of that micro CT scan as it's going through the surface. And you're going to see it as it passes through, and it's a big void. Yeah, it's like a quantum vacuum void. There are some filaments and material in there. My theory is that whatever containment field and structure in there that was an electromagnetic and low temperature plasma and superconducting field dissipated in the ensuing year between the original CAT scan and this micro CT CAT scan, and that at some point, if we could get in there, but it'd have to be done under very careful conditions, we could find more. This is the new one that just landed. This has just been retrieved. This is the second one that's in possession. It does not have the Proto-Sanskrit on it, but apparently it is inside. There is. Someone opened it up. I'm not going to get into it. I just learned of this morning at the same time the president's materials dropped. I have not been able to do a scientific review. But there is a second one now in our possession and in Mr. Masson's possession. So I just want a quick trip through that. This is the first time that I know in human history, in modern times, that's something of non-human origin, that's a technological device. Imagine what would happen if we could reverse engineer this. right, properly. We don't need Lockheed and Northrop, just leapfrog them. But boy, you're talking millions of dollars in security around that thing. That would be phenomenal. Way beyond my ability as a retired doctor to do. Now remember, what you're seeing here are the tip of a huge iceberg of whistleblowers, and we have literally hundreds of them. But most of them do not have the courage of these men to come forward. And I just want, in conclusion, to thank all of you and the media, but also to thank these guys, Battista, Anderson,